Do you have a vision for your practice, or do you practice blind every single day? I'm Dr. Michael Perush, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Dr. Troy Fox. Welcome to the KC CHIROpulse podcast, brought to you by CATS Consultants, helping doctors, as always, keep their pulse on success. Troy, you and I have talked about this a million times. You've got to have a vision for your practice. And yet, how often do we hear doctors say they don't have goals? They just go in every day, head down, see a bunch of patients, count the change drawer at the end of the night, and wake up and do the same thing the next day. It's not a very entrepreneurial way to practice.
No, it's kind of like getting in your car like this and throwing it in drive and just seeing where you end up. And the other thing that I see with that is you also have no idea where you've been. So if you don't know where you've been and you don't know where you're going, it really makes it hard to figure out, am I doing well? Am I successful?
Right.
Is my practice doing better? Are my patients happy with the outcomes, and are they referring others in? Are they staying with my practice? I have no idea because I don't have a vision. I just look at the bank account and go, well, I think we're doing pretty good.
And yet every day you may be repeating the same mistakes over and over that are actually causing harm to your business.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like a contractor who he's going to build a house. And he doesn't have drawings or plans, or he doesn't even have it in his head what he's going to build. So he just dumps some concrete on the ground and starts building just to see what he gets. I mean, chances of you getting really what you want, unless you're building the same thing you've built all the time, day in and day out, you're still going to make mistakes if you don't have that set of plans in front of you to make sure it's your checklist, to make sure, did I put the electrical in right? No, I didn't. I got to tear this wall out so I can redo the electrical. Did I put the plumbing in right? No, I got to tear out part of the foundation to fix the plumbing. That's making mistakes that don't need to be made. So you've got to have that roadmap for your practice. Otherwise, and I like what you said, unless you have a Tesla that drives itself, which your practice doesn't, then you're probably going to wind up somewhere where you don't want to be. And in today's world of high compliance, high rates of audits, et cetera, we think it's a really good idea to have a vision, a plan, and goals in place for your practice to help guide you.
And with that said, we are very big advocates of when you create visions, you create goals for your practice. We're also very big on you creating visions and goals for your personal life as well. This is a package deal. You don't just manage one and you let the rest of it just kind of do its own thing. We're very firm believers that if you do not put a plan together, basically the plan will run you because you don't really have a plan. And so you have to have a plan put together, and you have to have action steps to get to what you want. If you've ever wanted to buy a new boat or a new car, or maybe you want one of those silly hoverboards that probably will break my neck if I ever own one, which I don't think I'm ever going to get one of those. That's a little much. But let's say that I wanted a hoverboard and it was $8,000, and I also needed, safety equipment and all that. How do I get there? Well, in our heads, we can kind of work that one out pretty simply. I need to get a helmet, some elbow pads, some knee pads, and then I need to save to get my hoverboard. Okay, well, that's pretty simple. That's really what you're doing when you set a vision board. What do I want? You create your vision board of what you want personally, professionally. I've and you and I both talked about this. I have had so many visions and pictures in my head of what the physical plant of my office looked like. What did I want the vibe of my office to be like? Like my office right now is a real Zen relaxation. People walk in and they go, man, this is almost like walking into a spa when I walk in here. You can smell the essential oils. You can, the lighting, the sounds that you hear are all indicative of what I visualized and put a plan together to do. So that's just one part of my vision, but I think you have to vividly sit down and visualize what you want from your practice.
And you have to do this often because over time, your practice changes. Every time you grow, your practice changes. The economy changes, your practice changes. And here's the big ouch. Here's what a lot of people don't realize. There is a bell curve to practice life. And that bell curve goes up very, very steeply. and it comes down very, very steeply if you're not careful.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, we see a lot of people, a lot of doctors who didn't have a vision, they didn't have a plan, they didn't have goals set, and they got down to the end of practice life. And maybe it snuck up on them, which is even worse.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, they're faced with, I really need to get out of practice. I need to sell my clinic because I've
Mm-hmm.
got health issues, spouse says health issues, whatever. I need to just make a change. And all of a sudden, they didn't realize it because they didn't plan. There's no value left in their
Right.
practice. And so they're giving it away. And we see this way too
Yeah.
often.
And a lot of that's because you didn't reinvent yourself. I always think
Right.
reinvention, and what you said is the exact same thing. You constantly have to re-examine what your vision and your goals look like. And you have to make alterations to them, because if you stick with what worked in 1983 in your practice, and it was a certain look, and you had the wood paneling, and yeah, just even the look of your office, or the way that you ran it, or what did you expect your insurance to cash, to Medicare, to, what did you expect that mix to look like? What does it look like now? Is it completely different? And so what we see in a lot of cases is people that had very successful practices, patients that loved them, it just slowly started down. And then all of a sudden it went in a steep nosedive, because there's the new kid on the block that does this, that, or the other. And we never really reinvented ourselves.
Right.
We never
Or kept up
added.
with the times.
Yeah. We didn't keep up with the times. We didn't add new services. We didn't update our office. And I use this example often. I walked into an office one day to meet with the doc, and literally the plants that were in there were well, they were plastic, and they were older than me, and there were cobwebs on them and dust all over them. And that was my first impression while I walked into the practice. So I always start with a visual impression first, and then we can kind of get into the clinical portion and all that. You have to look at all aspects of the practice. But if you are not constantly looking at what your patients see, and that's part of the vision, is this big picture. I walk in the door every day, and I try to see what my patients see when they walk through the door. And so if my vision needs to change, or if I need to make changes to my practice, the layout, I'm looking at that. And like you talked about, with changes in your practice, when your practice grows, sometimes the layout that you have may not work anymore. Sometimes the flow in your practice may not work anymore. There's so many things that you have to look at, and you have to expand that vision over time.
Right. Yeah. We were constantly retooling the flow in our office, moving furniture around. And here's a situation that I had come up, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, probably. I had a doctor call, not one of our members, but a doctor calling looking for some help. He was getting audited by one of the insurance companies. Long story short, he didn't pick up a change that the insurance company had made several years before to one of the commonly used codes in chiropractic back then. He didn't realize that they had done away with that code, and he kept billing it. And unfortunately, their system kept paying him until they came back and said, hey, we changed that code 5 years ago, and you have since used that code, I forget, like something like 400 times. We want all the money back.
Oh my.
And that's another one of those ouch times when, gosh, if I'd have just been paying attention, that wouldn't hurt. That wouldn't have hit me like it did. So we've got to have a vision. And part of that vision is we've just got to keep up with things. And, I'm not going to beat a broken record here today, because this is what we do. But this is where it's good to have a good business coach behind you, advising you on some of those kind of things, because it's hard to keep up on everything.
Right. Let me give you a visual of that. So you're doing this all by yourself. And we always say alone on the island by yourself. Well, that doesn't really mean much, because, heck, I could see like some sand and Caribbean beach and some water and a couple of coconuts and some internet. So I could read a book or two, and I'd probably be pretty happy on the beach on a deserted island. How about this? How about standing on a bowling ball trying to paint a picture with an easel in one hand and a paintbrush in the other? That's literally what we do in practice all the time. We're constantly trying to stay on top of the ball and yet do our job, right? And that's really hard to do. We help you stay on top of the ball. That's kind of our job from a consulting standpoint, is we help you make sure that, like when you're telling us about your practice and what's going on and what problems that you're having, sometimes we catch something small. We've caught things such as folks that thought they were doing all the right things and come to find out that they weren't even a provider of the group that they thought they were still in.
Right.
Those things happen. And so we do some quick checks, and we've dealt with it enough times. We hear it and go, okay, no big deal. Here's what we need to do. And we try to help you through that. So we help you stay on top of the ball. You still have to paint the picture.
Right.
But if that ball's not moving on you all the time, and you're aware of what movements it's going to make before it moves, because we're helping you with that, it's a lot easier to balance on the ball and paint the picture. That's literally, from a standpoint of your vision, we'll help you achieve your vision, because we're going to know what you're trying to achieve. And then we say, okay, here's some steps that I would take. We've seen this before. I think we can help you with that. Now, when it comes to personal stuff, we're even fairly adept at that. I mean, I'm not going to tell you what kind of car to buy, but when you're making steps to maybe sell your practice in the future, there are certain steps that we're going to recommend that you take to make sure that there's good value to your practice, and that you give good value to the next doc that's going to take it over,
Right.
because we want them to be successful as well. We're all about chiropractic success.
Amen.
And so the whole goal is that you end up doing well in your practice, and the next person to come along basically has the same opportunity. And that's really important in practice, that you don't run it into the ground before. There's a lot of small factors involved.
Absolutely. And Troy, I think you just summed it up very, very well. Very, very well. So here's what I'm going to suggest. If you haven't been to catsconsultants.com and checked out what we do and how we're helping chiropractors succeed in practice and in life, go to catsconsultants.com, do your research, look through our stuff. More importantly, download, if you haven't done this already, download our PDF. There's a PDF download on there. Download our PDF to help you in 5 simple steps bring $130,000 or more back into your practice, more than you're making right now. So if you want to increase your annual practice income, I know everybody does, go download that PDF. It's totally free. So from all of us here at Cats Consultants, thanks for tuning into the KC CHIROpulse podcast. We appreciate you listening. We appreciate all the great emails and things that you guys send us. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time.